Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we have the case of Shaye Groves. Before we begin, it's important to clarify that this case is relatively recent, so there isn't much information about the lives of the people involved. But fortunately, the information that is available is enough for us to understand the context in which the story unfolds, and that's why I'm making this video today. So, up there on the screen, you can see the rest of my cases. Down here, you have my social media in case you want to follow me on any of them, and without further ado, let's get started. Shaye Groves is a 27-year-old woman from Lee Park, a suburb of the city of Havant, located in Hampshire County, England. It is known that she had a daughter with a man named Ashley Wyndham, with whom she apparently had a relationship until mid-2020. And from then on, she showed her softer side with her little girl on her Facebook account, where she posted photos of activities she did with her daughter, along with messages expressing how proud she was of her. The truth is that everything seemed to be going normally until the beginning of 2021, when all her friends noticed a radical change in the way she dressed. While it's true there's nothing wrong with that, and anyone is free to dress however they want, her style started to become a bit darker, so to speak. She got tattoos and piercings on her chest, neck, and face, and most importantly, she started to show an extreme obsession with true crime, which is basically everything related to criminal cases and serial killers. Like this channel, which also focuses on true crime, but not so much on idolizing serial killers. She didn't just start consuming all the content she could find on the subject, but also began acquiring all kinds of souvenirs. Mugs with the faces of her favorite criminals. She started collecting Viking axes, knives, and her favorite piece, a Celtic dagger that she usually kept close to her when she slept, placing it under her pillow. But that wasn't all. She started decorating her house with these themes. She had a coffin-shaped shelf, dark decorations, and elements that might seem sinister, for example. But all these things, as you probably know, aren't that unusual. Everyone can decorate their house however they like, and sometimes this can even be part of their personality. It doesn't have to be inherently bad. All of that could have just been a collection. She could have just been hyper-fixated on a particular theme, and maybe after a while it would pass. Someone might think that and just let it go, but it turned out to be much worse than just a passing interest. Clearly, the thing that stood out the most was her focus on the topic of serial killers. Everyone who entered her house on Botley Drive, where she lived with her daughter and her close friend Lori White, would see a mural covered with photographs of the world's most famous serial killers, like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, among others. While this might seem disturbing to some people, those who knew her point out that even though she had become a bit eccentric, she was still taking care of her little girl on her own. After all, the truth is there are people who walk around wearing t-shirts with serial killers on them. It's not exactly a good thing, but we can't say that just because of that, they're gonna try to kill someone. As long as she seemed mentally stable, no one would really pay much attention or be concerned. After some time, at the beginning of 2020, she met a man at a bar with whom she quickly started a relationship, Frankie Fitzgerald. Frankie was a 25-year-old man from the city of Portsmouth, which is also located in Hampshire. He was the youngest of 5 siblings from the marriage of Barry and Roseanne Fitzgerald, and his family describes him as a beautiful and gentle person. He was the father of 2 children, and his ex-partner, Charlene, the mother of the kids, describes him as a completely calm person who would do anything for those he loves. The relationship between Shaye and Frankie is described as on and off. That is, over a period of about 6 months, they would break up and get back together constantly. But there was something that kept them together, their fascination with BDSM. For those who aren't familiar with the term, BDSM refers to a series of consensual erotic practices that include, as the initials suggest, bondage, discipline, domination, submission, sadism, and masochism, where, of course, certain agreements can be made. In the case of this couple, it is known that they used to play certain games with sharp weapons, where Shaye would obviously use her favorite Celtic dagger, which she always kept handy under her pillow. Additionally, there is a record of a document dated March in which Shaye authorizes Frankie to be able to wake her up through sexual relations. And while it's true that both were committed to these practices, everything seems to indicate that it was Shaye who was a bit more obsessed with inflicting pain. In addition, little by little, they started introducing the use of certain substances during their encounters. It's also publicly known that Shaye used to sell cannabis from her property. And it's also important to mention that they installed a security camera in their bedroom with the purpose of recording all their encounters. Given this context, let's move on to the day of the events. It was July 17th, 2022, and at 7:45 in the morning, Vicky Bytap, a very close friend of Shaye Groves, started her Sunday morning by receiving a video call from her. Vicky answers, and even though it was very early, they start talking about how the weekend had been and that sort of thing. When suddenly, Shaye interrupts her and says that she had done something really big, but that she couldn't tell anyone about it. Obviously, Vicky, not having any idea what she was about to see, told her that she could tell her anything, no problem. And then, the following happened. Shaye Groves moved her phone a bit to show the back of the room, where the lifeless body of Frankie appeared on the floor. He was wrapped in a blanket and had a large cut on his throat. Clearly, at first, Vicky thought it was a bad joke, but after clearly seeing Frankie's lifeless body, she knew that something really bad had happened. Right after that, Shaye said the phrase, "I'm done with him." Obviously, Shaye hadn't reported any of this to the police, and according to Vicky's own testimony, her friend was in a sort of catatonic state, occasionally smiling and bragging about what she had done. Completely stunned, Vicky asked her what had happened, what reason she could possibly have had to commit such a crime. Then Shaye began to tell her the story. She told Vicky that the night before, she had gotten into an argument with Frankie before he fell asleep. After that, she took his phone and started going through all his conversations. That's when Shaye discovered that Frankie was talking to a 13-year-old girl through Facebook messages. She flew into a rage, grabbed the Celtic dagger she kept under her pillow, and stabbed him in the throat. After this, she went on to explain that Frankie had woken up, thrashed around, and made his own wounds worse. And the truth is, Vicky didn't think this was enough of a reason to kill him. But Shaye, as if guessing what was going through her friend's mind at that moment, told her that actually Frankie had been very abusive to her and that she had several pieces of evidence of this. Then, trying to keep her composure, Vicky asked her what she planned to do, to which Shaye replied that she was going to clean everything up and bury Frankie in her backyard. And as if all of this hadn't been disturbing enough, Shaye ended her call by saying to Vicky, "We're still friends, right?" Obviously, as soon as she hung up, Vicky called 911 and notified the authorities, who soon arrived at Shaye Groves' house. And the moment they set foot on the porch, a strong smell of bleach could be detected. I've already shown you before that in some places, the police use body cameras to record everything that's happening, and in this case, there is actually a video from these body cameras that the officers were wearing. In it, you can see the look of total surprise on Shaye's face when she opens the door and realizes she's been found out. I mean, in her mind, she never thought this was gonna happen. She thought everything was fine, that she had told her secret to a friend and that friend wouldn't say a word. The police told her they had received a call saying that someone at that address had a large cut on their throat and they needed to come in and check. Obviously, Shaye couldn't refuse, and when the police searched the place, they found Frankie in worse condition than they had imagined, since not only did she have a deep cut across her neck from end to end, but she also had multiple wounds on her chest. The police immediately spoke with Shaye, and she was arrested on suspicion of murder, along with her housemate, Lauren White, who was at the scene when the events occurred. Of course, that doesn't mean she was involved in what happened, but she was still arrested because she refused to cooperate with the police. Before being taken to the police station, Shaye said the following, "I don't know what the hell happened. He's dead. He's in my room. It's a mess. It really is a mess. I took someone's life. The knife I used is in the sink. The cut on his neck is pretty brutal. When I put it to his neck, he turned around." With this last statement, she implied the same thing she had told her friend Vicky, that he moved when she had the dagger at his neck, causing his wound to be much deeper. In any case, this detail did nothing to change the heart of the problem. She had ended Frankie's life and now had to face the consequences. Soon the investigation got underway, and the first thing they did was perform a post-mortem analysis, which showed that Frankie had been stabbed a total of 17 times in the front of his chest. He had 2 cuts in other areas of his torso, and in total received 3 stab wounds to the neck. When the police questioned Shaye and asked her why she did it, she replied that she had acted entirely in self-defense because it was Frankie who had attacked her first. And not only that, but she had also been suffering abuse from him for a long time. This was obviously something that needed to be investigated. On the other hand, her friend Lauren was released and only called to testify in the trials that would later be held against her friend. Actually, the reason she had been detained was because she refused to provide the PIN number for her cell phone so they could access her communications, but she was ultimately dismissed from the investigation because it was proven that she really wasn't very involved in the incident. When the police arrested Shaye, the first thing she did was claim that it was all in self-defense. For this, the authorities also had the testimony of her friend Vicky, with whom Shaye had communicated early in the morning. She had told them all the details she received during the video call with her friend. Therefore, the police had to corroborate everything that was said. They started by investigating Frankie's social media accounts, since Shaye had suggested that he was contacting a minor through messages, which, if proven, would be a crime. When they checked this, the police discovered that, in reality, the girl Frankie had been talking to was not 13 years old, but actually 17. And not only that, but it also became clear that as soon as he found out she was underage, he immediately chose to block her. With this first statement ruled out, there was something else the police needed to investigate. Once Jay finished that video call with her friend Vicky, Vicky sent her a total of 3 videos that she had recovered from the security camera they had set up in her room to record their intimate encounters, where it appears that Frankie was sexually abusing her. And not only had she sent them to Vicky a few weeks earlier, some of these videos had also been sent to other friends to whom Jay was telling that Frankie was being very abusive with her, that in reality she no longer knew what to do, and that she was afraid he might end up taking her life. So what the police did was recover more than 4,000 hours of closed-circuit security camera footage to see if they could find the clips she had sent to her friends, since in contrast to this, there was a document that detailed in writing that Frankie was allowed, for example, to wake her up with sex whenever he wanted. In addition, it was known that they practiced BDSM, so it had to be verified whether what was seen in the footage was consensual or not. They were greatly surprised when they discovered that the videos she had sent to her friends as proof of her partner's abuse had been edited. She had cut and pasted the parts where it was clear that everything was consensual, and this, rather than helping her, ended up turning everything against her. The trial against Shaye Groves began at the start of 2023 in the Winchester Crown Court. Prosecutor Stephen Perrion stated that Groves was never considered a victim from the beginning because there were many contradictions in her statements, and also since she was familiar with documentaries about serial killers and true crime, she knew exactly how to use the narrative of supposed abuse or attack to support a claim of self-defense. Here's what happens next. When Jay gets in touch with her friend Vicky, Vicky tells her that the attack against Frankie happened while he was asleep. But her defense at the trial claimed that, in reality, they had a heated argument because of the messages she had found on his cell phone. So she threatens to post on Facebook the videos showing him allegedly abusing her, and then he attacks her by grabbing her neck to choke her. At that moment, she says she desperately reached out for something to defend herself with, and the first thing she grabbed was the dagger she always kept by her bed. Without looking at what she was doing, she stabbed him 3 times in the neck. Supposedly, once she opened her eyes and realized that Frankie was no longer moving, only blood pouring from his wound, Jay tried to help him, but it was already too late, and that's why she started stabbing him in the chest. Logically, none of this made sense, and thanks to forensic evidence, it was determined that the wounds inflicted had been made by surprise, and there was no sign of any struggle, so it was concluded that Frankie was indeed asleep when all of this happened. On top of that, the videos with the supposed evidence of abuse had been manipulated, and she cleaned the scene very thoroughly after committing the crime. It was also proven that while Frankie's body lay lifeless in his room, she sent a message to another man inviting him to her house, probably to use him as an alibi, claiming that she was accompanied the whole time and distancing herself from responsibility. Finally, after several weeks of witnesses and evidence presented to the local prosecutor's office, Judge Kerr declared Jay Groves guilty of murdering her partner, Frankie, and she was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 23 years before being eligible to apply for parole. Additionally, the judge stated that Groves was a manipulative, possessive, and jealous woman, and that the relationship between her and Fitzgerald had a dangerous dynamic marked by excesses, which ended with the latter in a shocking and sustained attack. Frankie's family also gave statements after the trials, in which his mother described him as a bright light for them, emphasizing that he had his whole life ahead of him and it was taken away, while his father stated that their family was broken and they didn't believe they would ever get over it. Finally, Rod Kenny, the chief detective of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight police, gave a message to the family. "I would like to commend their courage, and I hope that the verdict brings them a small measure of relief. Even though I know that nothing can fill the void left in their family by Frankie's loss, I hope that the sentence Groves receives in due time will give them the peace of mind that justice has been served for Frankie."